wrapped up in your bed. Do you know what it's like to be me? I feel like I'm taken, but I'm technically free. But you want it so bad, so you just keep on telling lies. Do you not see my pain when you look into my eyes?
My name is Rick Alexander. I host all of the podcasts on the Morning Coffee channel. So sometimes we're going to do, so tomorrow actually, we have a long form interview, Dr. Brian Panko, who works on emotional recall therapy. And I think I'm going to continue to do the long form interviews. It's most likely going to be once a week. And then for the other ones will be like this, just a 10-minute or less kind of chat about something going on in life that we can grapple with, and then give you maybe some questions you can work through it. But I'm going to keep all of those things the same. You can subscribe at the Morning Coffee Podcast on basically wherever podcasts are found, now on YouTube and Vimeo, as well as I'm pushing into the next sort of frontier of this show, which is going to be the video version. And I think what excites me the most about doing these video versions is you're going to get to see my crazy nomadic life, because I never, so this week I'm recording all these in Charlotte, in North Carolina, in my girlfriend's house, but you'll see I'll be in Virginia Beach, and then I'll be in Colorado, and then I'll be in Maine, and then I'll be in Canada, and then I have this nomadic lifestyle. I record these shows wherever I am. I've gotten really good at finding quiet areas to set up my whole thing. And so now it'll be interesting with this element of video. You guys will be able to see, the craziness that is my life. All right, so one of the things I've been doing, pushing into this video space, is I've been doing Instagram TVs, but I know we have a lot more listeners on Morning Coffee than actually follow me on Instagram. And so I know that not everyone here has seen, or everyone that listens has seen the Instagram TV, but there's a couple of differences. I think with this, I'm more inquiring. And then with Instagram TV, it's like, these are lessons I feel like I've learned and I consolidate. And so that you'll notice the tonality in the Instagram TVs are a little more direct. It's a little more like, this is what I think. Whereas on Morning Coffee, it's a little more inquiry. It's a little more questions. But anyway, I found one of the things I did on Instagram TV that I thought was just so beneficial and so current was this talk on the Lion King and why it's important. And so what I wanted to do today is chat with you just briefly about why it is that we love the Lion King. And so I'm going to deliver that monologue here on Morning Coffee as well. And then again, if you are interested in ideas like this one, then head over to my Instagram at @RickAlexander_. And then if you follow me, you'll see I start putting out Instagram TVs, and they're just like this, but more message. I have more content than I know what to do with, is essentially the problem. So if you do dig my content, you have a lot to look forward to. All right. So I went to see the new Lion King, by the way, 10 out of 10, one of the best movies I've ever seen. As far as a remake, I just think it's incredible. I think they did such a good job. Timon and Pumbaa, I think, are probably even better than the last one. Everything you want it to be, so just go see it. I went and watched it with Danielle, and one of the things that was interesting is it was like mostly adults, and you got to ask yourself what's going on if it's mostly adults. And now, of course, part of that is the nostalgia. Is when we were kids, Lion King was like one of the first really big Disney movies, at least in my life, and so being able to relive that was just an exciting experience. But there's something else going on with The Lion King in particular, and a lot of the Disney tales, which is they're about you. And that's what you have to know. The reason that we watch iconic stories I mentioned on an earlier show, the reason we listen to stories that are about legend is because it teaches us about us, because we don't live that long. And so we have to, we use these, we think of the world in stories. And so if you can see a story about how to really be in the world, how to really win, well, then it resonates with your soul. And so when you watch The Lion King, you actually watch Joseph Campbell's hero journey personified with animals with cute voices, and they're witty and funny and shit. And that's why you like it. And so when you're watching The Lion King, we're going to start with Mufasa, who is like the godhead of the entire thing. And if you think about what religion tends to be, the message is to remind you of who you are. It's to lean into your humanity, because most religions say that you were created in God's image, or they have an idea that there's a divine spark within all of us. And so when you think about that, it's like what religion is it's actually reminding you of that divine spark. You lean into that, and that's how you take on the unbearable sort of forces in life, right? And so when you think about Mufasa, there's a part in the movie where he sort of, after he dies, of course, terribly sad when he dies. Nobody doesn't at least think about crying in that moment when he dies, and Simba watches it. But anyway, there's a part where he's up in the sky, and so that's sort of like that's what it's personifying there. It's like this benevolent force that's watching over you, that its job is to remind you of who you are so that you can get to the good, right? So that you can get to the life that you are meant for. And so that's what you see in The Lion King. And that's what you see with Mufasa. And then you have Scar. And so Scar represents the devil, not the classic devil, but the devil as in God's shadow, as in your shadow, the shadow side of your personality. You have the light and then you have the dark. And what we know in life is that dark is an illusion, right? It's just an absence of light. Dark doesn't actually exist. There's only a blockage of light that exists. And in the movie, every time you see Scar, that's him. He's always in the shadows, right? He is the shadow in your life. And he's kind of the malevolence and the part of you that could really fuck your life up. And I know that you have that part, because we've all experienced things and we're like, why did we do that? And it's like, yeah, because you were in your shadow. You weren't pulling the shadow into the light. And when it exists in the shadow, it's going to screw your life up. Because what happens to Simba when he listens to Scar? He makes him feel guilty, he makes him feel shame, and all that guilt and shame makes him run away from his destiny. And that's exactly what happens to you if you listen to your shadows. It will cause you to run. It will cause you to not want to stay in the light. It will push you away. And so that's what happens. Simba, at first, he listens to Scar, who represents that shadow, that iconic devil figure, and all that guilt and that shame causes him to run away. And we'll get back to that because the story kind of comes full circle when he comes back. So then he leaves. And when he leaves, he finds Timon and Pumbaa. And that's the land of Hakuna Matata, right? Like, no worries. Everything is good here. We can just party. It's like you're partying with your friends. You're getting high with your friends. Like, there's nothing to worry about. And that season in life is important too. And I think that we don't necessarily give that season credit, especially in the personal development space, because we're always so focused on growth and on striving and achieving and getting more and being more. And it's like, yeah, totally. But also, like, sometimes life's really fucking hard and, like, you just kind of got to get high with your friends. I believe that. Like, I think that those times are important in proverbial high, put in there whatever you want. But you go through these times, it's like sometimes you just got to hang out with your friends and, like, put the burden of being down for 2 seconds. And I think that's what it's showing there. It's like he's sort of going through this experience where he's actually, like, enjoying life again. And that's really important, because if you realize before Timon and Pumbaa came, he was actually going to die. A bunch of buzzards were actually going to eat him, and they come, like, barreling through, right? And rescue and save the day. And how many times do your friends do that in life when shit gets really hard, right? You get in a breakup, you get through, like, something terrible, and then your friends come running in and they rescue you and they bring you back up and they like save your life in some proverbial deep way. And that's what happens in The Lion King. So that's what you're watching when Timon and Pumbaa save him. All right, so he goes to this Hakuna Matata, and he, like, lives this lifestyle for a while, and then of course Scar is back, and he's, like, ruining everything, because that's what happens when a leader listens to their shadows. And in that moment, Nala, who goes out looking for something to rescue the Empire, she runs away and she finds Simba, and she is his call to adventure. And so the thing about your life and the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell is that you're always, and I talk about this in the show a lot, so I know you guys are familiar with this, but you're always partaking in your hero's journey. And so it's got all of the elements of the hero's journey in this storyline. And so when Nala comes back, she gives him his call to adventure. She's like, Scar's ruining the kingdom. You're the rightful king. You got to come back and claim it. And then what does he do? He denies his call to adventure, because that's what we all do. Because we think, who am I to do that? Because who are you to do anything in this world, right? And who is anybody to do anything? And that's the thing. That's the hero's journey. It's like you're seeing, people forget that for, a lot of King Arthur's life in the story, he's actually just Arthur, right? Until he gets the sword. Then he has to grapple with what it really means to be king. Like Mufasa says, a true king focuses on what he can give. But you don't know that you have it inside until you go test it. And that's why you always deny your call to adventure at first. So you deny your call to adventure. And then finally, after grappling with it, it's your destiny. And there's a lesson in that too, because how many times you go to this Hakuna Matata and you're hanging out with your friends and life is good and there are no worries, but you know that you can't stay there forever. Because there's something about taking on the responsibility of who this life calls you to be that allows you to fully express who you are in the world. And so when people stay in that Hakuna Matata, they stay in that happiness sort of just that they stay in the high for longer than they should, it starts to deteriorate at their soul a little bit, because you got to take the responsibility. At some point, you got to go back and face the shadow. And that's what he does. So finally, he answers his call to adventure, just like I hope that you do someday. And so that's what you're watching there. Oh, in his grappling with a call to adventure, sorry, I'm trying not to be all over the place here, but this is also something to know. Rafiki, who is the baboon in the movie, he's his friend. He's what you want in a friend, especially when you're on your hero's journey. And so he basically is really nice and kind and wise, and he's got all this deep wisdom in him. And at the same time, he will hit you over the head with his staff and point you toward the north arrow, which he points him towards Mufasa in the sky, and that's when he says, remember who you are. And that's what you want in a friend. You don't want the friends that are going to let you stay in Hakuna Matata all the time. Those friends are great, but you can't live your life by them. They're just part of your friends. And so finally, Rafiki gets him to answer his call to adventure. And that's what I hope that you are. And I hope you're that for other people too. Like, be that wisdom, be that rock, and be willing to slap somebody across the face when they need it, proverbially. Don't hurt anybody. And so you get in this. So finally, Simba goes back and he answers his call to adventure. The thing to know at this moment is that when you answer your call to adventure, your life's about to get way fucking harder. And that's what nobody thinks about. And a lot of times we think we're grappling with, should we start a business? Should we write a book? Should we try to go after and date this person? Well, when we decide to, we have a high. That's when Simba's running back to the kingdom and he's stoked and he's fired up. And then something happens and he gets back and he has to actually confront the shadows. And there's a point where he's fighting Scar when he comes back for the kingdom, where the shadow almost convinces him that he's right. And Simba almost dies just like Mufasa did in the end. And the reason he almost dies is because Scar, the shadows, are so deep and so good at what they do, at being that force of evil, that they have him convinced that maybe he is fucked up. Maybe he was wrong. And then what is it that happens when he remembers and he finally defeats Scar, his shadow? He remembers that what Scar said to him wasn't true. Or he learns that it wasn't true. And that's the thing in your life. Like, all of your shadows, all the shame and the guilt and the things that are making you feel like you got to run away from your destiny, none of that shit's true. That's all an illusion that we have cooked up in our mind, that our shadows will continue to feed us. And until we realize that they're not true, we won't learn the lessons we have to learn in order to save the empire and sort of fulfill our destiny. And you're going through these hero's journeys over and over and over in your life. And you should go through many hero's journeys if you're living a good life. And if you're accepting the call to adventure sort of in a forthright manner, then you should be going through this cycle many times. But it's in the underworld where you learn all of the lessons. So just because you decide to go after the person or start the hobby or start the business or write the book doesn't mean your life's not about to get way harder. You're about to head to the underworld after you answer your call. And that's where you're going to have to grapple with your shadows and the shame and the guilt and all of the bullshit that's going to make you feel like it's not for you. And so question to ask yourself is, where in the LionKing are you right now? Like, where do you fall? Most of us, put yourself in Simba's story and ask yourself, in Simba's life, where are you now? Are you in Hakuna Matata? You know, one of the things that happens is when he does decide to fulfill his destiny, there's a really good lesson in this one. He comes back. Well, what happens? Timon and Pumbaa come with him, right? Everybody has this idea, like, if you grow, if you learn, if you fulfill your destiny, that you like outgrow the squad and just like leave them behind, or you have to level up without them if you have to. Sure, but don't be a dick. Like, if people want to be around you, remember that those people saved your life when you were about to get eaten by buzzards. And so, like, that's the thing to know. But the thing that happens is that they accept that he is the king, right? And so if your friends are going to stay with you and they're going to follow you on this new journey, well, then they have to accept that you have a new role. Like, you're going to step into a new role. Because if they don't accept it, this is why it's contingent on that. Because if they don't accept that you're in this new role, they're going to always pull you back down. It's going to be a nightmare to just stay who you are around them. And you find that because you go home, right? And you do it around family. You've stepped into a new role. You get around family. They know right where to put the knife. They pull you right back down. And it's just you can't spend your life in this struggle. You know, you got to learn the lessons, and then you got to step into your destiny. Like, you can only have so many dates with destiny before it's time to like do the fucking thing. And so ask yourself, where in the Lion King am I right now? Maybe you're Simba when he was young, couldn't wait to be king, right? But what happened? He was in his ego. And where did his ego get him? Back into the shadows. Remember, he traipsed with Nala all the way into like the elephant boneyard there. And maybe that's you, right? And he had this attitude, like all the way singing into his shadow. He said, I can't wait to be king. He said he couldn't wait to be king because he didn't really know what it meant. He didn't understand the full burden that he would have to accept and the responsibility that he would have to accept in order to step into being the Lion King, right? And so when he does that, and so maybe you're in that ego phase, just remember, you're gonna end up in shadows if you're too far in your ego, and you're gonna hope Mufasa is still alive to come save your ass like he did then, right? And so you hope that benevolent force of good is there when you need it. But you got to be careful about following your ego, because it's going to have you excited to do all kinds of things without you understanding the full responsibility of what those things mean. So my question for you today is, where in the Lion King are you? Where in Simba's journey are you right now in your life? I hope you can figure it out, because if you figure it out, then it gives you some context to know, oh, it's okay that I'm like kind of like in low level to discomfort right now, and I'm sort of grappling with my thoughts, and it's like, yeah, of course I want to be rescued from this, but I'm in the underworld. I answered the call. I got to learn the lessons. And if you don't learn the lessons, if you don't do the work, if you don't get the things you need, you never get to the point where you get to run the kingdom. Because what happens if you run the kingdom without learning the lessons? Scar, right? It's impoverished land. You can't do it. You don't know what you need. You don't know what you need to know in order to deal with life correctly. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, this one went too long. I love you guys. We'll talk tomorrow with an episode of Morning Coffee, but it's going to be a long form. And then on Friday, we'll chat with another 10-minute or less episode, although this one's a little longer. All right. Love you guys. Chat tomorrow.